2001 was the year that the world went a little bit crazy. It was also the year that I was struck by lightning. This is also the time, if you can call it time, when I had an NDE experience, a near-death experience, as people call it. Now, since that time, I haven't been thinking about it too much because things actually got a little bit more complicated in my personal life than it was actually before that incident. So let's step back into, I guess, Act 1, right? Before the NDE, in my ordinary world, I was going through a breakup, a marriage breakup. And I became really depressed. And I won't go into the details of all that because this is about the experience of having a near-death experience, which I'm trying to articulate because I know a lot of people have different kinds of ones. Mine, I think, was a little bit odd. It's not really in a place where, you know, there's a shining light and people are around and all that kind of stuff. It was very different. So, my mental state, I was ready to go. I was ready to pack up. I had separated from my previous wife and I was sharing a house with a friend. One evening, there was 2 storms, and the second one was when I got struck by lightning while I was holding onto the fridge in the kitchen. It actually came through the window. Later, we saw that it actually hit the gum tree outside the window and had split it. So, yeah, my roommate at the time, he saw the whole thing happen. He was in the room, like it was an open room, but he was right at the dining table next to the room, basically, next to the kitchen. And this is where it happened. In that split second, I imagine it was a split second, but for me it was just however long it took for me to process what was going on. In that split second, Earth time, I heard my roommate, my friend, screaming, swearing as he screamed, and I was consumed by a white blue light, and I knew that it came from behind. I also heard a clicking noise, like a metallic clicking noise. And even in that state, I could process what was going on. And I could kind of figure out that I thought that that clicking noise was actually sparks or some kind of electricity between myself and the fridge, even though I was holding it. But I kind of thought that maybe it was arcing somewhere else, possibly from my head. So that's what I thought I was hearing. And instantly I said to myself, to my higher self, to whoever this embodiment of a person is, and I said, as in, God. So this is how it ends for me. I was really kind of just surprised in a way that this was actually how I was going to leave this earth. I didn't expect it to be this way. I don't know what I expected, but I just did not expect to be struck by lightning and to die from a lightning strike. Of course, you know, who knows what's going to happen in the future? It might happen that way, who knows? But at the time, I certainly didn't expect that. So it was more of a surprise. There was no fear. If anything, it was just acceptance. Now, with that, while I was in the blue, white, fully absorbed light, which it froze me in the space that I was in. I couldn't move, or I didn't move, or whatever. But I felt like I was just, my body at least, was just stuck. So now that was the incident, okay? And from that point, I jumped into another scene entirely, okay? There was no transition into the other scene. It didn't go from being in the kitchen absorbed by lightning to this otherworldly scene. Like, there was no transportation to get there, or no stepping out of my body and looking down on myself, as you'll see some people have experienced. So with me, it was simply one cut to the next, one scene to another, where I was floating, the best way I can describe it, okay, floating through vastness. But a part of me kind of thought, it kind of looks like space, like outer space, but a part of me thought, this is internal. This is actually going in, this is inside me. I've actually gone on the inside, not the outside. I don't know how to really quite articulate that. However, I was in this space, and within that space there were specks, like you'd see stars, I guess. Now, I could not see my body. I did not feel like I had a body. There was another presence with me, and I could really feel that presence strongly, and it was just, it was like I just accepted that that presence was there. It's almost like I expected it to be there, right? Now, it did have a bit of, if you want to put a gender to it, it was more masculine than feminine, and I got the impression that, I won't say human-like, but he had human-like energy, but beyond what we understand as human energy. However, there was sort of a fingerprint, if you like, of a human form or something within this construct of this other being that was with me. At the same time, it also felt very powerful. It also felt angelic, for a better word. And so I knew that this other entity was with me. And it was like having a road trip and you have someone next to you and they're very quiet, but they're just going on the journey with you. And so as you're driving along, when it's time to talk, you've got someone there go, oh, did you see that? Or whatever, right? So you're not bored, I guess, on a big long trip. Not that I was bored in this experience, but it was an experience like you're sharing it with someone. So this entity was sharing my experience as I was sharing that entity's experience as well. So all these dots, all these energies, I've seen orbs before. They weren't quite like orbs, but you can imagine orbs, but with like energy inside them. And what I figured out very quickly was that all these dots that I saw were actually like different universes, if you like, or different planets. So the planets that I saw were bursting in my mind with other beings, with other experiences, with other, if you want to call them aliens, extraterrestrials, you name it. But not only that, some of these dots, to me at least, represented almost like other timelines, or maybe not so much timelines, but other, what people call, I guess, parallel kind of existences. So perhaps a part of me was in amongst all these others as well. However, the one that I was really attracted to, I was getting really close to, was coming up pretty fast. So it was at that point where I just realized that, wow, I am so free of the earth. I am so free of not so much the earth, but, well, yes, the earth as in, the whole planet and what it represents, but particularly the energies here, the denseness here, the people here, the ones that have caused me pain, the ones I caused them pain, the ones that are loving and caring, the ones that are confused and miserable, all those people with, whether you think about it or not, even the really, really highly spiritual ones have still got dense energy. And that is how I saw it. And I was not caring about any of it. I did not care about my life that had passed. I did not care about any of it. In fact, it was almost like that was someone else's life. It wasn't my life. I had shed all that baggage that this earth or this society, this experience, in my experience, has shed. And I was absolutely, what would you call it? Like, I was coming down. I was detoxing, okay? I was detoxing in a way. But I was also understanding that none of this, and you've heard this probably a million times, none of this is as real as what happens after this. This is just a little bit of a taste of a performance. This is just a little bit of a taste of an experience. And that's it. What we do here, from what I understood, from what I gathered from that after, more than 20 years later, and through experiences that I experienced later, which I'll briefly get onto in a minute, is that this experience is just one for you to observe and record, and that's it. So every single one of us, when you think about it, that's all we are really doing, is observing and recording. However, some people push that to the extremes. They observe, they record, they manipulate, they make trouble, they create fantasies, they develop huge egos, they create a world around them with other people who also have that same kind of signature and draw those people in. Some of those are victims, some of those are psychopaths, and let's face it, have you seen the world lately? It's not going in a great direction. And even though that was 2001, I could even see that back then. So I'm getting closer to this, let's call it a planet, this existence, this light, but it's not like a light at the end of the tunnel, okay? It's more of a energy ball, if you want to call it that. And I knew that if I got too close, and I was kind of being fed that through the being that was with me, if I got too close, I could never go back, ever. That's cut off. All the people in my life that loved me, all the people that I love, all the things that I wrote down, all the stories I told, none of it would mean anything. And I would not go back to that ever. It was just like, here's a piece of paper, you cut it in half, that half is gone. This half is going in a totally different direction, right? And they're not related in any way now because they're two separate things. So my story was about to end there. But then I thought of my daughter. My daughter had been caught up in the mess of my ex-wife, in the sense of my ex-wife got into a cult, and my biggest fear was that my daughter will not know the difference between independent thought and dogma. And so that was a bit of a fear because I felt responsible. If for whatever reason I chose to come here to Earth, then that comes with it responsibility. Just like everyone else has responsibility, right? People say, oh no, you're only responsible for yourself. Yes, to a degree you are, but if you're in the care of someone else and you want that person to get to a point where they're mature enough to have independent thinking, then yes, you have a responsibility to that person. You have a responsibility to your pets who need you. You have a responsibility to show how, we pick up after ourselves and don't pollute the waters and kill the fish who have nothing to do with anything other than just trying to exist just like we do. We are not here to destroy this gift, this experience. We're simply here to record the experience, to go back to our higher self and go, wow, that was something else, wasn't it? What's next on the agenda? What did we learn from that? How can I advance even further and find a spiritual connection closer to, yes, I will say God, call God whatever you like, but how do you find that? And the simple answer for me, at least, is be creative. Everyone's different. For me, it's about being creative. So when I thought about my daughter, I needed to come back. Now, I don't know whether I had a choice in it or not. I don't know whether I was being given a kind of instruction to go back. But whatever it is, I felt like it was the right decision to make. I also felt like ultimately it is my decision to make. And so at that time, which by the way seemed like, I can't put it into minutes, but obviously you got to remember, this is a lightning strike, bang. In that time, all this stuff happened, right? And that's when I heard, Goran, you're going to be fine. And whether that came from within me or from an external source, I can't tell you with certainty, because I had a near-death experience. I did not die. Nobody who has a near-death experience actually died to the full extent of what death is. So we are in that corridor. We are not beyond the door. Now that corridor looks different to a lot of people. Some people who might be highly religious might see a Jesus figure. Other people might see something else. Whatever it is the construct of what your experiences have been and what you're comfortable with. But the one thing I can tell you from what I've read at least and how I felt is there is so much more feeling of love beyond this than there is here. And with that, again, there was no transition. It was just one cut to the next. I came back into my body really quickly. There was nothing in between that I could remember. And my body filled with weight, like water, I guess. I always describe it in the way of if you've got a water balloon and you're kind of holding it, you know how it goes like that. And that was me. And I was let go. Nature let me go. And I basically just fell to the floor. I didn't fall as such, I didn't bang my head or anything, but I just got to the floor with the amount of weight and gravity, the denseness that is here. And so that denseness had hit me with reality again. And there I was. What happened after that? Well, roommate tries to call an ambulance. I stop him. Later he calls the hospital. They said, no, he has to come in. He could have internal injuries, all that. Part of me was just saying, but I'm going to be fine. I was told by someone much greater than a doctor, in my view, that I'm going to be fine. So therefore, I'm going to be fine. And this is the thing. Like, if we look at everything that's happened now with the pandemic and all that sort of stuff, you know, everyone has a choice to do whatever they want. But as soon as dogma gets involved, that's when everything goes to shit. All right? So I didn't go in. I wasn't exactly fine, because what happened was it took about 2 weeks before I saw a doctor, because after about 2 weeks, like I couldn't walk. Like, I was shuffling my feet. The sensation of extreme sunburn on the top of my feet particularly was really bad. I had a little burn mark above here. And apart from that, I also didn't have an awakening. I was still the same person. The only difference was, like, none of my problems went away. In actual fact, they got worse, right? I went down a slippery road, and then up and down and up and down. So it's not like, there's a revelation, whatever. And maybe the part of the reason for that is because I'd always been like this, in the sense that I'm not, even as a child, I never liked religion. There was something about it that to me was quite evil. I'm using the word evil. It's not evil, but it goes against the grain of what my intellectual intelligence is telling me. So therefore, for me, it just made no sense. Why would anyone do that when you've got a direct link between yourself and the higher power? You don't need anyone else to kind of complicate that, because once you start complicating stuff in between, that's when you get into trouble. That's when you start to become fearful. That's when you start to become greedy. That's when you have to push your agenda onto other people, because you are either greedy or fearful. And so it perpetuates this cycle that is not good for the planet. The environment, the energies, the vibration goes to shit. And that's why, if you have a look around now, if you look online, whether I don't know what your thoughts are on that, you only know that yourself, but there's more interaction, or there seems to be more talk of alien stuff, okay? Extraterrestrial. Now, the reason I bring this up is because when I was younger, even with me not knowing about this sort of stuff, I kind of was gravitated to these other beings. In fact, I used to wake up in the morning when I was a kid, during the night, like very early in the morning, and it was like, it's like that your family had just been there and they'd gone, and then they just left me here. And I'm like, but why am I here? Like, I just confused. And then, get back into this life, forget about that life for a bit. It's like going to kindergarten, or whatever, like you get dropped off, and then every now and then you get a glimpse of, your parents down the road or whatever. So it's that kind of thing. And what I felt also before this, and what I experienced, was a lot of what you'd call, I don't know, like ghostly encounters or whatever, communications or dreams, vivid dreams, whatever you want to call it. It gets a little bit deeper than that, but I'm not going to get into all that. And to me, this was all normal. To me, the biggest fear is people. Everything else is just trying to kind of communicate and explain that people are fucked up and we need to change. And that's essentially it. So I was fine, by the way, with all this. And then what happened was, the really big thing that I got from that was that it kind of gave me permission to speak my truth and to be creative. And if I didn't subscribe to the idea of a religious God or, society telling you what to do, then just because politicians pass down some stupid laws that's going to, affect my health or whatever, like, I don't need to subscribe to that. Because again, we're all our energies are stuck here, and we need to connect back to that source of that higher intelligence that we all have and cut that frickin' cord, right? And treat each other with respect. We all have free will here, and I think it's time that we used it. So after that lightning strike, what did happen was I developed what people call sleep paralysis. I didn't really, not that I can remember, I didn't have that before the lightning strike. So the sleep paralysis happened, and it happened in a big way. But then I also got what I would call automatic writing. So then, after a little bit, I thought, well, why don't I just write a book? So I did. And I published a book. And then I published another one. But what happened during that process was that I still had these vivid dreams or encounters or surreal, lucid, whatever you want to call it, with interacting with aliens, where it's like me talking to a human being. And one in particular said to me, and that's why I mentioned this earlier on in this video, is you're only here to observe and record, and that's it. You're a writer, is what this being told me. Now, that was just before my book got published, and I said, I'm not a writer, like I don't get any of that. I ended up, as I said, publishing, but I did more than that. I ended up getting a degree in film. I ended up teaching film making at a college. I ended up writing scripts, which I think are more powerful than the stuff that I wrote. But this is all part of my journey, my creative journey. And the biggest reward I got from all this is that I finally found that, let's call her a human being, from one of my surreal dreams that I had after my NDE, where this human being was in a place, let's call it an alien environment. And she said to me, we have to go and finish this. And so to my beautiful wife, Claire, oh my gosh, she changed my life. She got me to go to film school, or not got me to, that's my choice, of course. But she knew that I was lost, and she really gave me a little bit of direction and reminding me that this is my life and I should do it the way that I want to do it and what resonates with me. I still struggle with that. I don't know what it is. I guess we all do. I have roadblocks, I think I'm going the right way, and then something happens and I lose focus, or there's too much going on externally from other people's energies. I'm one of those people that I'll suck it up like a sponge, like other people's energies, whether they're negative or what. But, you can't control sometimes the people that you're with. Especially if you want to care for certain people. So I get a bit lost, I get a bit frustrated. I'm trying not to get angry at the world. So this is a little bit of a reminder that, you know what? it's okay. All I'm doing is observing and recording. So I hope you got something from this. And please, just remember that you do not need a guru. You do not need these people who see magical things in clouds that are just simply shapes of nature to say it's a sign of this, it's a sign of that, or whatever. People go too far with everything, all right? Including, yes, I'll say it, the gender stuff. We're all human beings, for fuck's sake. I don't care. I don't care who you go to bed with. I don't think, you didn't go and do anything extraordinary that, you're a victim of anything. You just have a sexual preference. Yes, I know before in a certain time things were difficult, and I appreciate that. But come on, as time goes on and this newer generation, we're all equal here. All of us. If you believe in reincarnation, you might come back as a heterosexual for all I know, So let's get a grip and treat everyone the same. And that way we can start breaking down those barriers as well. Okay? I know that's probably going to offend some people, but I don't. If you knew me, which you obviously don't, then you would know that I come from a place of pure love. Okay? And yes, to justify it, if you like, my best friend was gay. There you go. Before his passing when he was about 18 years old. So it means nothing to me. But what it did mean to me was a beautiful friendship. A friendship that to this day, I have not really had the same connection with anyone as a friend. Yes, I have beautiful friends, but not in the way that he did, because what he did for me was introduced me to me, and at a time where I just thought I was just a regular person. And then he pointed out, well, you're not, because you're regular Goran. So therefore, how could you be a regular person? Just like all of us, we all have our thing. So thank you, Paul. Okay, I might just leave it at that. So be kind to each other and be respectful. Respect your own body, respect your mind, respect your spirituality, respect other people's opinions, and try not to do what I do and let shit get to you. Good luck with that. Okay, bye for now.